Tonight on the 5 o'clock news, rock and roll fans try to pull the hair out of a rock star and he escapes into his limo. Then, now that's a story. It's a news story, but it's still a story. And if people were there and watched it, they'd go home and they'd say, you wouldn't believe these people were grabbing at his hair. It's a story, right? How about this? Entra a tu mundo noveleros. Una historia de amor, intriga y suspenso. Now, those are stories that abuelito and abuelita watch on TV, right? Telenovelas. Stories. How about this one? Once upon a time, there was a very nice king and queen, and they had a fat little boy named Bozo the Prince. And there was a big frog in the garden who hated Bozo so badly because Bozo threw stones at it. And one day the frog took out a magic wand and turned Bozo into a chicken. Turned Bozo into an ant. Turned Bozo into a fly. Excellent. Now, we just made up a story, but now what does that story sound like? It sounds like a fairy tale. Well, right now, I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories, and I actually started out here reading it from a book. And I read it so many times that I didn't even have to try, I just sort of memorized it. And it's an old-fashioned story. Then I'm going to tell you a modern story about when my brother and I, when I was 8 years old. How old are you guys? No, it's funny, I'm not making this up. I'm going to tell you a story about how my dad put me and my brother, who was 14, I was 8, on a train at night and said, bye-bye, tomorrow you'll be in Chicago. And I said, you're letting us go on a train by ourselves? And we watched him stand outside the train waving goodbye as the train took off late at night. So I'm going to tell you guys that story too. That's a true story. But right now, I'm going to tell you the story of the boy who set out to learn what fear was. Now there's a word that I'm going to use in this story, and the word is shudder. When you put your hand into something that's really gooky and yucky, and you didn't know it's there, you go like, ugh. That's to shudder. Or if somebody tells you, you won't believe I saw a squirrel skeleton out in the backyard last night, you shudder, you go, ugh. Well, this is the boy who set out to learn what fear was. So once upon a time, there was a farmer and his wife, and they had 2 sons. Now, the young boy was a little thick in the head, so thought his father. But the older boy couldn't do anything wrong. He was perfect, he was smart, he was good looking. He knew how to mow the lawn and plant the corn. But the father thought that the young boy was just a goofball and didn't do so well in school, talked a little slowly. But the strange thing was, whenever the father needed something done, he would ask the older brother to do it, unless it was at night. Because at night, the older boy was too afraid to go outside. Oh no, Daddy, don't send me outside. It makes me shudder. Oh, come on, son, buck up. I need you to walk through the cemetery and pick some of those flowers over there. Not at night, Daddy. It makes me shudder, for it scares me. But his little brother would always volunteer. I can do it, Daddy, for I don't know how to shudder. Oh, shut up and go get the flowers, what the father would say. At parties and picnics, people would sit around and tell scary stories. And the older brother would say, oh, that's too scary, it makes me shudder. And the little boy would listen to the scary stories and he'd say, I wish I knew how to shudder. I wish I knew how to shudder. And one day, the father said, if you wanted to be a farmer, I could understand, or a carpenter, or maybe even fix elevators, I'd understand. But you want to learn how to shudder? What good is that? And so the father went next door to the church where they went, and he talked to the minister, and he said, Father, I need advice. My son wants to learn how to shudder. What good is that? And the minister said, you can have him work for me for a day, and I'll teach the boy how to shudder. And he looks into the fireplace, and up the huge chimney of the old castle with cobwebs and darkness, out comes a half of a man. Boom! The top half of a bloody body. And the boy looks at it and he says, I wish I knew how to shudder and be scared, but I don't. And he sticks his head into the fireplace, looks up the chimney, and he says, that's only a half a man. Where's the other half? And there's a terrible rattling and screaming, and down comes the other half of a man. And it joins with the top half. And the old man gets up, and suddenly 3 more men fall down the chimney. And huge leg bones from very tall people fall down. And 2 skulls bounce out of the fireplace. And the men come up to the little boy and say, do you want to do some bowling? The boy lies sleeping in his beautiful bed with silken sheets. And the princess and the maid pull back the sheets. And the maid goes down to the pond beneath the castle and gets a bucket of tiny little guppy fish, sneaks back into the bedroom, stands over the boy, and pours 1,000 little tiny guppies over his body and pulls up the covers. And they stand in the corner. And the boy, and he wakes up and he goes, "Ah!" And suddenly a huge smile appears on his face. And he says, thank you, thank you, thank you, for now I know how to shudder. And so we get on the train and we walk through the cars where they have the regular seats. And then we get into the Pullman car. And I said, what's this, Dad? And he said, this is where you're going to sleep. And the nice man in the blue cap and blue uniform and gold buttons opens the door to our room on the train. And here are bunk beds with beautiful fresh sheets and pillows that say Burlington Northern Railway on them, and towels. And my dad said, have a great trip, guys. See you in a couple of weeks. And he leaves. And my brother and I look at each other and we go, yes. And it's the middle of the night. It's 3 in the morning and the moon is up. And the only sound I can hear are the crickets and the and the sound of my boots walking in the gravel. And I get to one car and I'm about to grab the crank and I hear, hey, huh? And I look up and there's this big, tall Native American man with long black hair and a leather jacket and jeans. And he says, where are we? We're in Minneapolis in the train hump yards. Oh, hey, listen, I didn't mean to scare you. I just got on the train in Duluth and wasn't sure where I was going. But he was a very nice man. He said, look, I don't mean to scare you. Do you know where this train's going? And I pulled the card out of my pocket. I said, this train's going to Sioux City, Iowa once we put it together. And he looks down at me and goes, good. That's just where I want to go. Thanks. So I worked for about another month that summer. I was what was called a 90-day wonder because I only worked the 90 days of summer before I went back to college. But it was the most exciting job I've ever had in my life. It was kind of dangerous. It was fun. It paid good money. And I love trains. But today, if I want to ride a train, I go down to Union Station downtown, just a couple minutes from here, on Alameda Street. And maybe I'll take the Gold Line to Pasadena, or maybe on the weekend I'll take a train to San Diego. So that's my story.